talk about message box 2. This is another way of doing message box other than using the pulse code. And then I'm going to talk about sound, background sound again, and how it can basically continue when you move to the next room. Also, I'm going to talk about a reset button where it will reset your character back to the original spot in the game, and also talk about persistent objects. Let's get started. Okay, the first thing is the message box. I'm going to talk about right now. The message box is red with a big X on it, and basically I have this set up so that it's not going to be shown on screen when you look at it at the beginning of the game. So when you play the game, this message box is not going to be on there. It's just going to have this sign right here. But when you hit the sign, the invisible object, which is this red message box, is going to change to a blue message box. So let me just show this to you. The red one's called Not There message box, and the blue one's going to be called message box 2. So with Not There box, I have it set to persistent, meaning that when I move to the second room, that this box will still be there in the room even though it's not showing up. So like in room 2 or room 1, I just have the character, and see there's no message box, there's no message, and there's no message box. When you set an object to persistent, it's going to appear in the same spot it was in the first room. But that's only going to work if you switch objects from invisible to visible. If you delete the object, it will not appear in the next room. So if you're doing the persistent object thing, do not delete objects once you if you collide with an object, don't delete it. Because if you delete it using the persistent, it's not going to show up in the next room. So you gotta basically, when you collide with the object, you have to switch the object to invisible. Alright, so go back to the message box here that's not there. That's why I have it checked persistent, because I just want it on the first room, which is room 0. So, and I have the depth at minus 100 because I want it to stand out. I want it to be in front of the character, so when the character goes across the screen, it's not going to be in the way of you trying to read the message box. I want the message box be in front of the character so you can read everything. So go to Add Event, and I clicked on Create, and then I went to the Move tab and I dragged over a Move object, and I just have it set to the middle direction and the speed at 0, so that way it's not going to move on screen. Just keep it static, and that's it, and it's not going to be visible. You don't want Not There message to be visible. You want it, basically it's a placeholder. That's all it is. The Not There message box is there as a placeholder, but you don't want it to be visible. Alright, and then the second message box, which is going to appear on screen, is called the message box 2, and it's going to be blue, of course, with your message in there. Your message is going to show up. I didn't want to do that with the crosshairs. Let me get back out of here. No, I don't want to save it. So you get your message here, and that's how it's going to be on screen. And it's kind of transparent too. Went into the image, went to opacity here, and just reduced it down. So you can see behind the objects, of course. And that is, I modified the mask to eclipse because I want it to be set to only the button. So I basically made an eclipse object and dragged it out, and so when you press using your finger, it's only going to be you only be able to destroy, or not destroy it, but switch it back to the red placeholder that's not visible when you press this button. So if you press the message box up here, it's not going to switch to the not there message box. It's only going to work when you hit this button, which is attached to this image. So this is one image, and so I have it set to Eclipse, and it's only going to be active. You only be able to press on it when you put your finger on top of this image area right here. Not this top image here, but this image right here. So that's why I selected the Eclipse and dragged the where I want the mask to be at when I put my finger on it. Because if I didn't do this, it would be set to the whole object, and so no matter if I put my finger here or on this thing, this message box here, it's going to switch to not active. But in my situation, I want it to be set to only the circle only, so that's why I have the mask on that image part only. Then I have it set to persistent, and it's going to be visible, and I have the depth at -100, and so I grab the create object and the add event area there. Then I dragged over a sound icon, so it's going to make a sound when you press on the button, and then I have the move object static. It's not going to be moving at zero speed. Set the self. And then I have a press, click on it, add event, mouse, left pressed, and went over to main one tab, dragged over a instance change. So it's basically going to switch from the message box 2, which is the blue one, and it's going to change to the not there message box, which is the red one I showed you earlier. Perform the event, yes. Then grab the else from the control tab. Then I grab another change instance over here, and this one message box, message not there. That one I'm not sure why I have that one set up there. I think it should only be one. Yeah, I'm not sure about this one. I'm going to delete this one. I'm not sure why I had this one right here. This one's... Oh, I know what this is all about. This is about the sign. The brown sign, which is this object here, message box. So basically when I press the button on, and when I press the X button, it's going to switch the message box to not there, and then also it's going to switch the sign message box to a not there message box. So basically, got two sign images here. One's going to be visible, one's not invisible. So this message box is invisible. It's at persistent. It's in depth of 0, and so that one's going to be on the screen. But this message box not there is not going to be on the screen, and it's marked persistent. So like I said, you got to make sure to swap images out when you have persistent on, because if you destroy it, it's not going to be there in the next room. And it saves from you from copy and pasting from one room to the next. This persistent will help with that. And so when the character collides with the message box, the sign, when it collides with it, person right stop and person stop left, it's going to also do this. It's going to basically, it's going to tell the computer to say not there message box, and it's going to appear message box 2. So when he hits the sign, when he collides with the sign, it's going to switch this one that's not active to one that is active. And if he goes back to the sign, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to switch not active sign to active sign. Perform yes. And then I have a sound icon. When to add event, create dragged over sound icon. This is going to play the background sound, and it's going to loop true. And I only have that sound icon in this first room, which is room 0, and room 1 it's not there, because if I had it there it would repeat, it would double up, the sound would double up, and I don't want it to double up, so I didn't have the sound icon there. This is another way to repeat your sound without stopping and replaying again or doubling up. So the reason why I don't have the sound icon here in the second room is because it's going to double the sound, and you don't want it to double the sound, so that's why it's not there in the room. Reset button. I went to add event, grabbed step icon, and basically I went to the control and dragged over code sheet, and basically this is saying that it's going to be your image, your button's going to be moving along with the camera view. So I have it x equals view underscore x view, bracket 0 bracket plus 1600, y equals view underscore y view, bracket 0 bracket plus 1380, and then I have a draw icon, add event, draw, dragged over code sheet, code tab, and it has the same information, the same coordinates in it, 1600 and 1380. And I have this marked as persistent 2, depth at minus 50, visible. When you left press mouse from the add event, then it's going to restart room underscore restart, parentheses, in parentheses, then the semicolon here. So that's going to restart. Basically this code only works for the character, so when you press that button, the character jumps back to the where he was originally when you first started the game, but it doesn't reset everything else. Then you have to do other steps, which you have to basically for the background sound, you have to go to main 1 tab and bring over a stop sound, and you want to stop the sound in the background for playing. You want it to stop for one thing, and then the reason why you want to stop it is because if you don't do that, then the sound is going to double up and double up and double up, and you don't want it to double up. So you have to do the stop sound. So you have to stop the sound from playing, then drag over an else statement, then drag over another sound from the main 1 tab. Then you want it to play again. So basically, you're stopping the sound from playing. Then you want to replay the sound from playing. So that way, the sound will play and it will not double up. So you have to have a stop action for the background sound first. Then second, replay the sound again, the background sound. And drag over an else statement, control tab, and then you want to basically do this with the message box. If the message box is showing up in blue, you want it to change it back to not there. Perform event yes. Grab note else statement from the control tab. Then basically you want to switch. Also, you want to switch the message sign from not there to being there if it's already switched to not being there after you collected it. Because when you press the X button, it's going to switch the sign from being invisible to not invisible. So if that ever happens when you press the button, the reset button, it's going to bring it back. So like I said, the code only works for the character itself. It only resets the character back to the original spot. But everything else in the game, you have to use the swap objects for every other image you have in the room. Otherwise, it's only going to do one thing. It's only going to jump the character back to the original spot. That's it. Alright, and like I said, persistent object, see how this reset button's here? it's not going to be in room 1 here. So this, when he moves to the next room, it's not there, but it will be there because I have it set to persistent. Persistent means it's going to be in each and every room without you having to worry about copying and pasting the object to the next room. But make sure that you don't, with your objects, when you collide with them, you don't want to destroy the object, because if you destroy the object, they will not appear in the next room. You have to switch the object from being visible to not visible, otherwise it won't work right with the persistent. So let me show you how this works. Applies to the sign, shows the message. See how I click on here, it's not getting rid of it. If you click on here, it will go away. See, it switched both objects to not being there. Reset it, carry goes back to the original spot, and you got the sign popping back up. Now if I neglect to click on this to delete it, I can move past it, and it's still going to be there, of course, because I don't have a timer set on it. See, my reset button's still there, and the sign has swapped back to not being there anymore. And see how the sound does not double up. And that's it. I gotta show you one more thing though. Alright, one other thing here is, so basically when he collides with this object here, this is called the block. Next room, it's called next room. Alright, so when he moves right, he's going to go to next room. So the next room icon is going to be in the main 1 tab. I dragged over a go to next room. And then basically it's going to, if the sign message is not there, then it's going to switch to message box. So if I somehow if I did read the sign and I press the X button, then it's going to destroy, it's going to not destroy, I mean swap back to not being invisible, as well as it's also going to swap the sign from, it's going to switch the sign from not being there or being there to not being there when you press the X button. So this is pretty much doing the reverse. It's going to switch the sign that is invisible to being there when you move to the next room. So like I said, when you press the X button on the sign, it's going to swap the image from being there to not being there, as well as the sign post is going to switch it from not being there to being there. So I'm sorry, when you press the X button, it's going to switch the sign that's in blue to red, so you don't see it anymore, and also it's going to get rid of the signpost. It's going to be switching from being there to not being there, and this does the reverse. So when you hit the next room button to go to next, it's going to change the signpost from not being there to being there, because you want to see the signpost in the next room. So you have to reset that. Then you put an else statement in there, Control Tab. Then you do another change instance, and you're saying if the sign is there in blue, like it was originally, and by chance I neglect to press the X button, to switch it from being there to not being there, then when I hit the wall next room, it's going to switch the message box 2, which is in blue, to being not there message box, which is in red. So I don't want to be visible when I move to the next room. I want to reset it to not being there in the next room. So that's also a safety guard if I neglect to press the X button with my finger. So there's a lot of things you have to think about when you're doing this game, make sure it works, and you always want to test out your game, make sure it's going to work to everybody's advantage, not so they don't get annoyed with or aggravated with it. So you got to put in all the time to test it out. Oh, that was just talking about the gravity there, which I talked about earlier in other videos. Alright, that's pretty much it. That's how you do the persistent, the reset button, the sound, the message box. Thanks for watching.